The sort of shoes you'll wear will be very different for if you're going for a run. If you're going hiking, you'll always change your shoes to suit the environment. And yet for the occupational workspace, they don't. They've got one shoe, one brand, that one size fits nobody. Both the boots and the socks are not given enough attention because, again, that is where you interact with that environment.
G'day, Travis from ADA LE Gear with Dr. Rob Orr from the Tactical Research Unit at Bond University. Thanks, Rob, for your time.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Great to be here today, and we're changing topics. Obviously, you've discussed a lot of things with SEMPS over the last year about capabilities of ADA. Today, we're going to talk about footwear. Could you explain to us what tasks first responders, whether it be military, police or fire, would potentially doing under load, whether it's ballistic vests, load carriage itself, further respiratory tanks, and if you could start off with describing their tasks and we go from there.
Sure. Okay, so obviously they have some tasks that are common and some that are very discrete. So, like, for example, in the military, even within different branches and within different corps, they've all got different primary roles. They can be carrying equipment, they can be setting up a vital asset protection, they could be static, they could be mobile, they could be dragging equipment, they could be lifting equipment, they could be carrying equipment, they could not even have equipment. All right? And then in law enforcement, you've got long hours on your feet if you're standing in front of a vital asset protection or if you're actually doing a foot patrol all day versus sitting in a vehicle. But one thing they do all have in common is somewhere, somehow, they always have load. And even if they don't have load, their body interacts with the three-dimensional environment predominantly in one way, and that's through the feet. And then when you think about those different tasks, they could be standing, they could be walking, they could be running. They could be running in a straight line, they could be running across uneven ground, they could be moving laterally, having to rapidly change direction. So the actual environment in which they operate is very, very complex and constantly changing whilst they're carrying that load, but that interaction with the environment is always through the feet, generally into the ground.
So do you think footwear potentially could be overlooked in situations where first responders are carrying load? It's probably the last thing that they may think that they need to change. And do you think it gets overlooked far too often? Is something that probably needs to be potentially assessed as a task by task?
Yeah, look, you're 100% right. And the biggest thing that I always find that's really amusing is the fact that they look at how many different types of shirts they've got for breathability. They'll look at different types of pack systems and how they can adapt the pack. But here's your one boot. And it's one type of boot expected to do everything. And I think that analogy is like if you're going out somewhere, the sort of shoes you'll wear will be very different for if you're going for a run. If you're going hiking, you'll always change your shoes to suit the environment. And yet for the occupational workspace, they don't. They've got one shoe, one brand, that one size fits nobody. And I do think that the foot and both the boots and the socks are not given enough attention because, again, that is where you interact with that environment. You think about the primary mechanisms of injuries that are very common in the military, law enforcement, fire and rescue: slips, trips and falls. That becomes problematic. So you've got to look at things like, well, what is the slip of the boot? Because the boot is that interface with the ground. And you want this beautiful sweet spot between having sufficient layering so that they don't slip, but at the same time it can't provide too much grip because we also know from research that too much grip can cause injury. Yep. As you start to increase in speed, the amount of force going through your foot into the ground increases exponentially. Now add load on top of that. So the compressive forces being pushed through the ground become problematic. So you need a shoe that has a good bottom to protect from slips, trips and falls, but at the same time, that interaction between the foot and the boot needs to be able to absorb some of that compressive force.
Footwear, particularly in the first responder space, has two midsole constructions. We have an EVA, and for those out there listening and watching in, EVA is traditionally found in your runner. So that's that nice, light, soft substance. The other midsole construction is polyurethane. Polyurethane can be found in top-end runners and obviously tactical boots. There is a big difference between the both. EVA under load compresses over time and basically does not return to form. Where polyurethane is an example of a compound that doesn't lose memory and returns to form continually. And what you'll find though in polyurethane midsoles in tactical boots are quite expensive. They're mainly used within the European markets, and they're starting to filter into us. Many companies now are looking to invent EVA hybrids, so using a plastic compound to support the soft aerated cushioning, but to reinforce it under load. We've got a great example here of the Solomon footwear brand. I've got a 3D mould here of their midsole. So what we've got here is a product using 4-dimensional chassis, which is quite different to the market. Again, this is with the background of hiking, mountaineering, looking for stability, which this product does provide through the side of the shoe, but also adding an extra dimension of support under load. So you've got cushioning at the top, shock absorber, stability on there, side panel, further cushioning added to the heel, and then the outer sole. So that connection there is creating 4 dimensions of stability and support under load. Further to that, a really aggressive outer sole for traction to reduce the slips and trips. So that's the progression of how tactical boots are starting to move in the market to support what Rob's saying, to perform under load consistently.